The truck came to a stop in the gravel, and she stepped down, like a ghost. No salute, no words, just boots, dust, and silence. Her name, Sergeant Elara Miles, but no one here cared about names, not yet. She walked past the squads like she didn't hear the laughter, didn't react to the sneers, didn't even blink when someone hissed behind her, "Hey, zombie girl, did someone cut out your tongue?" She didn't answer, because she never does. At Fort Wesker, silence is weakness, and silence was all she brought with her. No radio, no comms, no voice. In a place where orders screamed through earpieces and camaraderie lived in code words, she was already marked as defective. Not broken, but useless. No one had seen her file, because it didn't exist. The base had dozens like her in rotation transfers, temps discipline cases. But she was different. Not in rank, not in medals, just in presence. She moved like someone who knew too much, or someone trying to forget everything. They didn't like it. The way she sat alone in the mess hall staring at nothing, the way she trained without speaking, faster, sharper, but always alone, like a shadow learning to walk among men. One recruit tried to talk to her once, Private Hensley. A kind soul, too soft for Wesker. He placed his tray beside hers and said quietly, "You're the only one here not playing games. I like that." She didn't look up. She just stood, picked up a tray, and walked away. After that, no one tried again. But they talked. They whispered behind walls. They joked loud enough for her to hear. Must be PTSD. Or some up went wrong. Fried her brain. Maybe she's a fake, wearing the patch of a ghost unit. Some called her a liability. Others called her a statue. One instructor said she was a mistake that hadn't exploded yet. And yet, every simulation run she joined her team somehow survived. Not because she shouted commands, not because she typed anything into the shared HUD, but because she moved first. Before the enemy flanked, before the traps activated, before the gunfire echoed, she moved, and every time the others followed without knowing why. They started winning, but no one gave her credit. Not really. They said it was luck, coincidence, a broken clock with perfect timing. Until the 6th run. That's when the sergeant major stopped the replay mid-mission and pointed at her. "She's not using any equipment," he growled. "No radar, no heat sensors, no drone uplink. What's she watching?" No one could answer, because there was nothing on her screen. No feeds, no schematics. Just a silent black screen and a woman who seemed to hear war itself. They ran medical scans, checked her neural implants, found nothing. Then the rumors changed. Not from weakness, but from fear. She hears things. Feels vibrations through her boots. Reads wind patterns and shadow shifts like a machine. She's not mute. She just knows things before they happen. But without confirmation, without her speaking, none of it mattered. She was still the ghost of the squad. Still the last chosen for drills. Still the one left off the mission board. Because in a world of orders and tech, she brought only silence and instinct, and that made them uncomfortable. One day they pushed her too far. It was a full unit coordination test. Urban breach. Mock hostiles. Every soldier wired up voice lines, pressure sensors, full comms relay. Except her. When the mission began, everyone yelled. Chaos, noise, conflicting commands. And she didn't move for 20 seconds. Just listened. Head tilted slightly. Eyes scanning walls, door hinges, loose dust in the air. Then she moved, through a side alley, climbed a wall, entered through the roof. Silently. No one noticed, not even her team, until it was over. She took the flag alone, neutralized all the sensors. No shots fired, no commands spoken. The judges stared at the feed, stunned. But the squad leader was furious. "You disobeyed, we had a plan." She stared at him, her lips unmoving, then turned away. He grabbed her arm. "You think you're special because you play Ghost. This isn't a one-woman show." Still, she said nothing. He shoved her. The whole hall saw it. But no one spoke up. No one defended her. She just stood there, steady, waiting for the heat to pass. Then quietly she picked up her gear and walked back to the dorms. That night the whispers returned, not of fear, but of doubt. What if she knows something? What if she's not broken, but chosen? What if her silence is the strategy? They didn't know it yet, but something had shifted, because silence was about to become the deadliest weapon in the room. The footage spread faster than orders. By morning, half the base had seen the clip Ilara moving alone, no voice, no support, just deliberate, almost graceful violence. As if she'd rehearsed the outcome before the mission began. She wasn't using maps, wasn't watching screens, wasn't even syncing with the satellite uplinks like everyone else. And still, she reached the objective before anyone knew what was happening. The trainers called it a breach of protocol. The analysts called it unverifiable advantage. But the whispers on the base, they called it something else. Instinct like that, that's not luck. She's reading the field like a book. There's no way she's just a sergeant. Suddenly everyone was watching her, but not with amusement anymore. Now it was suspicion, and suspicion draws predators. They assigned her to a new squad, the worst one. Not just misfits, but loudmouths' egos, the kind who bragged more than they bled. The team lead was a corporal named Vance, former special recon, dishonorably demoted. He walked with a crooked grin and spoke like every word was a warning. His orders were clear. Break her, or prove she's a fraud. On their first day together, he circled her like a shark. You don't talk, you don't sink, you don't even blink when barked at. She stood still, eyes forward, not tense, just aware. You think you're better than us? He spat. Nothing. You're not special, mute girl. You're just a trick with boots. Still silence. It wasn't defiance. It was something colder. Like she'd already played this scene in her head and decided it wasn't worth reacting to. So Vance doubled down. Every exercise, he altered the plan last minute. Every night he changed the gear allocations so she'd be under-equipped. He even cut her route markers during a night drill, hoping she'd get lost in the fogged-out valley behind the range. She didn't. She made it back 2 hours ahead of schedule, with a full perimeter map, drawn in charcoal, from memory. They thought it was a fluke, until she did it again. And again. She was never first to act, but always last to fail. One mission changed everything. A real one. Not a simulation. Not a test. A live op. Rural containment. Unknown hostiles. Deep fog communications. Blackout. Vance led. The rest followed. Ilara stayed at the rear. No comms, no HUD, no connection. And then halfway in, everything collapsed. An explosion ripped the path apart. Their signal relay fried. Half the squad lost visuals. Panic spread like fire in dry brush. Fall back, someone shouted. No flank left. We're blind. Where's the uplink? Screams, smoke. One man fell into a sinkhole gone. And in the chaos, Ilara moved. Not toward the fallback zone. Not toward safety, but toward the heart of the collapse. She didn't run. She listened. Knees bent slightly, breath slow, fingers out like antennae. Like the earth itself was speaking, and only she could hear its voice. She signaled with one hand. 2 fingers down, 3 fingers pause. She touched a tree trunk, felt the pulse of vibration from distant footsteps. Then she vanished into the grey. They thought she was deserting, until 20 minutes later. She returned, dragging a bleeding squad mate behind her. Face soot black, shoulders trembling from the weight. Then another, and another. She'd mapped the blast pattern by ear, tracked the survivors by the echoes of their coughs, and led them out through a dead zone without any tech, all in silence. At debrief, the commander sat stiff behind the metal desk. You ignored the chain of command. You broke protocol. You endangered your unit. She didn't speak, didn't explain. Until the commander slid a file across the desk, stamped with a red seal. You know, we pulled your clearance history, right? She said nothing. Black patch. No trace. You're not in any known unit, but you've trained like Tier 1. Silence. Finally, the commander leaned forward. You're not mute, are you? Ilara blinked, once, and spoke. 2 words, I observe. Her voice was low, controlled, like it hadn't been used in years or was never meant for ordinary ears. He stared. Then why the silence? She answered. Noise is reckless. But terrain, movement, shadow, they never lie. Then she stood, saluted, and left. That week her new assignment arrived. Advanced Recon Unit 7, the same team that once blacklisted her for non-compliance. Now, they requested her, not because of her silence, but because of her clarity. Because where others relied on tech, she relied on the world itself. She wasn't a soldier who followed commands. She was a sensor, a strategy, a ghost with purpose. And finally, they were starting to understand she didn't need to speak, because the battlefield was already speaking through her. They sent her to the mountains, where the wind cuts between stone like knives, where even drones choke on the elevation. It wasn't a punishment. It was a test. Advanced Recon Unit 7 was falling apart. Their lead scout gone. Their sensor rig fried in a hailstorm. They needed eyes. They needed instinct. They needed something beyond the manual. They got her. Ilara stepped off the snowcat without a word. No handshake, no salute, just a nod. And that blank stare, like she was already scanning the terrain behind your eyes. The unit wasn't convinced. Another silent operator. Great, just what we need. Someone who doesn't talk when lives depend on it. But they didn't know her language yet. Her footsteps, her pauses. The way she would touch the earth with her bare palm. Then whisper something to herself, just beneath breath. Not words, calculations. She wasn't moving like a human. She was measuring. On day 3 it began. A rogue cell had moved into the North Valley. Camouflaged, no emissions, no movement on satellite, but they were there. You could feel it in the cold that suddenly turned sharp, in the echo that didn't bounce quite right. Ilara moved to the cliffside. Neon stone, eyes closed, just listening. One soldier scoffed. What's she doing praying? The others laughed. But 20 minutes later she opened her eyes and pointed. There, behind the ridge, under the shale crest. They checked. At first nothing. Then the heat bloom. Subtle, slow, like someone inside knew how to hide from machines but forgot how to hide from the wind. The commander narrowed his eyes. How the hell did she? The medic whispered. She didn't find them. She felt them. That night the whispers changed again. No more jokes, no more insults. Now it was caution, respect even. They started watching her from a distance, mimicking the way she walked the perimeter. How she tilted her head when clouds shifted, how she avoided dry leaves on instinct. A lieutenant asked her once, How do you know what's out there before we see it? She looked at him and finally answered, I don't listen for people. He blinked. Then what? She replied, I listen for everything else. That stops. By week 2 she was leading patrols. Not officially, but the unit followed her body language. They slowed when she slowed, held breath when she held hers. It was never said aloud, but everyone understood. If she moved, you moved. If she froze, you froze. And when she disappeared for 10 minutes, no one panicked. They waited, because they knew when she returned, she'd bring answers. One night, during a blizzard lockdown, the squad gathered around a flickering heater. No stories, just frost and silence, until someone finally asked her, What were you before this? She didn't move. Then slowly, she pulled a folded cloth from her jacket, unwrapped it. A unit badge, black on black. No name, no motto, just a single number burned into fabric. They all stared. Someone whispered, That's a myth. The Black Cell, Unit 13, a division erased from official records, said to operate without orders, said to win wars by listening to the land. Someone asked, half joking, Did you really serve in 13? Ilara didn't answer. She just folded the cloth, tucked it away, and the room went silent again, because they already knew. 2 days later it happened. A full assault. The rogue cell came down from the cliffs at night. Stealth insertion, EMP pulse. Comms dead, vision jammed, chaos. The unit scrambled. No central orders, no time to regroup. It should have been a massacre. But Ilara, she stood in the storm like it was sunlight. Her hand went up. One signal flat palm. Everyone dropped. A rock shifted nearby. She flinched before the bullet cracked past her cheek. Then she moved. Down a slope. Undercover. Silent. Every motion told a story. Cover there. Sniper 2 clicks west. incoming from the left. Hold breath. No one spoke, but everyone followed. Like dancers on a battlefield, they moved as one. Because she was the rhythm. The ambush failed, not by firepower, but by fear. The enemy ran confused. How did this unit know where they'd be? Why were they always one breath ahead? Because of her. Because silence was not her weakness. It was her weapon. At dawn, with the valley reclaimed, the commander pulled her aside. "You're not just a censor, are you?" She didn't respond. He said quietly, "You don't predict war. You read it." Still she didn't speak, until he added, "Why do you stay silent?" She looked out over the cliffs, the wind biting, the frost clinging to rock like skin, then said, "Because strategy isn't born from shouting." She turned to him, eyes steady. "It's born in the pause, between noise and consequence." They stopped mocking her after that night. No more side comments, no more dismissive looks, no more treating her like background noise. Because now, every soldier knew. When the world went quiet, when the tech failed, when instinct was the only thing left standing, Ilara Miles was the mission. The quiet girl with no voice had become the one voice they listened to without a word spoken. At headquarters, the story reached ears above the mountain line. Commanders, strategists, people who once dismissed her file as an anomaly now requested it by name. The after-action reports used strange language, unverifiable environmental sensing, preemptive tactical maneuvering, non-verbal leadership via sensory dominance. But the soldiers at the base had a different name for it. They called it the echo effect because she heard the fight before it began. She was offered a rank, a public one, with medals, with clearance, with protocol. She declined. Not because she didn't earn it, but because rank was just noise, and she'd spent her life listening past the noise. Instead, she requested reassignment, not to comfort, not to command, to the borderlands, the edges of conflict, where the wind was wild and the ground still whispered truths most men never heard. Before she left, the unit gathered. No ceremony, no speeches, just quiet footsteps behind the barracks, faces in shadows, people who once laughed at her, now standing with hands clenched in silent respect. Then Corporal Vance stepped forward, the man who once tried to break her. He held out a comm device. "Standard issue, scratched and worn. You drop this," he said, forcing a half-smile. She took it in her hand, looked down at the tangled wires, and slowly handed it back. No words, just a look that said, "I never needed it." He nodded. Not in shame, in surrender, because she had won. Without commands, without noise, without needing to be loud to be heard. She walked out of the base with nothing but her field gear. No convoy, no escort. But every man and woman turned to watch her go. Some saluted. Some simply stared, unsure why they suddenly believed in silence again. They say she still roams the quiet zones, places where GPS fails and radios go mute, where armies crumble not from bullets, but from not knowing what's coming. And when those moments come, when the wind changes, when the birds go silent, when your heartbeat feels too loud, some say she's already there, lying still beneath the ridge, one hand on the earth, listening. Because war never screams at first, it whispers, and she was born to hear it.